But if
Um,
I find the let me get the link. I'm gonna go back on mute, but I'm just gonna pull up the article. But I don't mind reading. Just give me a second.
okay. And we hope to see that I know we're on Facebook Live and there are some people in the Zoom room from different places. So please chime in the chat and let us know where you're calling in from or where you're zooming in from rather, so that we could just see where everyone is from. And I heard a bunch of people um, registered and they said they heard about it from WMNF. We were on WMNF, or I was on WMNF yesterday, and we talked a little bit just about civic engagement and the elections. We got a bunch of people who are on the OCGC mailing list. If you're not on that mailing list, please sign up. And Amber, if you could just let me know when you're ready.
Okay, I'm ready now.
All right, go ahead for us. We appreciate it.
Oh man, can everybody hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you now. I didn't hear you earlier.
When I go to the article,
It
it
cuts you out. No worries, no
yeah.
worries. We got this, and I will go ahead and read, and then we will jump into our discussion. So the article is called Local Elections, Small Margins, Big Consequences. It's about by Kelsia Prim, and it was actually published on in May of 2025. So it's not too a few quite just a few months ago. It's hard not to feel the difference between voting in federal elections versus local elections. Presidential elections and even midterm congressional elections definitely have a way of dominating the headlines, the airwaves, yard signs, and American consciousness as a whole. But the national glitz and pop of Washington, D.C. aside, the most direct and immediate impact on your daily life often comes from elections that are much closer to home at the local level. From decisions about your children's education to policies about public safety, housing, and infrastructure, your local officials hold the power to shape the community where you live. And yet, many Americans frequently miss their local voting opportunities. The truth is, the importance of voting in local elections isn't limited to the issues on the ballot. It's essential for democracy to work fairly and effectively, 24/7, 365. And for historically marginalized communities, especially, casting a local ballot can have powerful long-term ripple effects. Local elections directly affect your everyday life. Mayors, school board members, city council members, judges, and county commissions make decisions that impact everything from zoning laws and policing policies to school curricula and library funding. Unlike federal officials, these leaders are part of the immediate environment you and your neighbors live in. They often make those decisions with little public oversight, largely because of low voter turnout and the ongoing prevalence of news deserts where few, if any, media outlets are dedicating substantive resources to the coverage of local politics. When it comes to turnout, local elections often see voter participation rates that are half or even less than those in presidential contests. That means a smaller number of voters end up making big decisions. When you vote on your local decisions, your voice carries more weight than it does in national ones, which is one of the biggest reasons why voting in local elections is important. Small local elections equal big impact for marginalized communities. Voting locally is one of the most powerful tools for historically underrepresented and marginalized communities to make their voices heard and drive systematic change. Low turnout among eligible voters of color, low-income individuals, and young people often leads to decisions that don't reflect their interests or needs. But the opposite is also true. When these communities show up to vote, they can shift the balance of power. That's because a single vote carries more power in small-scale elections. For example, in municipal elections, many races are decided by just a few hundred or even a few dozen votes. This makes every single ballot crucial, building a more equitable democracy from the ground up. Local elected officials are also often the ones who decide how accessible elections are in the first place. While national battles over voting laws grab headlines, local policymakers and the election officials they oversee often decide how those laws are applied. They determine voting hours, polling locations, and how voter ID laws are implemented. They can ensure fair redistricting, expand access to early voting, and introduce local laws that address barriers to ballot access. By turning out in force, historically excluded voters can help elect leaders who prioritize equitable access to the ballot box, laying the groundwork for broader long-term reform. Voting in local elections is a direct way to put power in the hands of those who will safeguard democratic processes. Electing officials who understand the barriers marginalized groups face is the first step towards dismantling those barriers. Over time, consistent local participation can drive greater inclusion in the political process at every level. Local victories often inspire broad change and can push state and federal governments towards greater accountability and equity. The turnout problem in local elections and how to fix it. Despite their importance, local elections are often held at odd times of the year, and as noted, receive far less media attention. This leads, to lower turnout and reduced public engagement. Many voters simply don't know when elections will be occurring and how much is at stake. And this is where America's nonprofits and their well-established voter engagement power comes in. Research shows that when nonprofits actively support voter education and participation, it can dramatically increase turnout in communities that are often overlooked. For more on this and how your organization can support the thousands of state and local elections happening across the country, be sure, and they had to RSVP for an upcoming webinar, All 2025 Politics Are Local. And again, this is from Nonprofit Vote, and it is the article Election Small Margins, Big Consequences, and it is in the chat if you need more guidance on that. And so that's our grounding, and this is where we kind of want to see and hear people's responses on this very important article and happening. We are on the eve of an election day. Tomorrow in Tampa, people will be going to the polls in District 5 to decide who is going to take over the rest of the term in the seat for that city council seat, So as we look at this and we hear what was just read or read over the article, which lessons apply to our local context here in St. Peter, Tampa? I will put that question out in the chat and would love for people to come off mute. This is a conversation and respond if anyone can. And feel free, you can raise your hand. You don't have to raise your hand. All you have to do is come off of mute.
So locally, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, so locally for me, this I call it an issue with Deuces Live. Um, I think not a lot of input. I remember going to the Voices of the Corridor. I
Mhm.
put as much input as possible when I found out about the issue. But by the time I found out that it was an issue, it was well into it. To me, they had already
Oh, you're cutting out a little
but
bit.
in order to like showing up at city council, I wish I had the opportunity to like see it through from the very beginning when it first became a city council issue.
Mhm.
It would have helped me to know like who to back, like knowing what they believed about the Deuces would have helped me know who to vote for or how to engage. Like I wish I had just known from the very beginning. Like when I wish I had known from the beginning. I'm saying it like that. It would have affected
Okay.
my vote.
And Amber, can you restate the challenge for those of us who are, or for those people who are Zoom, they're chiming in who don't know about the Deuces Live or the contest? Can you give us a little bit about that?
Well, the Deuces has a rich history in the Black community here, and they're trying to bring the Deuces back, but the Deuces is not being brought back in a way that is the best for the community that is here to serve. That's the best, cleanest way I can say that. A lot
Hmm.
of decisions are being made that are looking real gentrification-y, and the families of those who lost businesses and those, generational wealth was stolen. And now
Hmm.
that there's an opportunity to get that back to the families and to the neighborhood and the community that it was stolen from, all measures are not being taken to do that. Like a lot of the things that we need are being overlooked. I think the Meriwether building is probably the biggest thing that comes to mind, but it's surely not the only thing that comes to mind. They sold the Meriwether building to some outside developers and nobody even know. All
Hmm.
all this talent, all this people in St. Petersburg, collaboratives could have come together to handle a project like that. And the Merriweather building was only $800,000. That's
Hmm.
nothing. It was almost free. And
Hmm.
it's like robbery. Like so many people here could have done it, and they could have done more. It's just I don't even want to get into that.
That.
But
Right, right, right.
it's a highway robbery, and we weren't given a fair shake. The community was not given a fair shake, and I see that as just the beginning. I don't think we've even seen everything that's going to happen on the Deuces. That it's just not going to be good for us. But voting, if we had realized it, I think we all would have been more active, more showing up at City Hall, like holding them accountable. It's sometimes it's hard to diss somebody to their face. And if they would have had to diss us to our face if we had showed up at city council and been
Right.
fiery about it. But they didn't have to even they did it behind our backs. And we kind of let it. We let them do it.
Right, right, right. Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much for sharing. And one of the things that you're reminding me of is when we talk about what can we do before, these things, the decisions are made, and how can we be more civically engaged, right? And you brought up one very important thing, and it's like go and use your time at city council. Whether it is, I think in St. Petersburg, you get 3 minutes and you go up there and use your 3 minutes to let the city council know as a citizen and resident what's important to you, right? And while you're at the council meeting, you'll see what decisions are being made. So it's very important that we show up in that space and really, really look to see, what we can do and where we can go from there. And so I want to take a step back, and I hope that people will engage in the chat. We have about 30 more minutes, and we want, if possible, to break into some smaller groups. But when I think about something that's happening in, or that happened in St. Petersburg, that the civic engagement or neighborhoods and residents being engaged made a change in, one of the things is there was a park, Childs Park, Lake Park. I think the official name is Linear Park or something like that. But that park was granted a bunch of funding. And when it came time for the funding to actually be implemented, that funding through city council and other people was kind of redirected. And then we had a wonderful neighborhood association president, Brother John Muhammad, and he started a campaign where they wrote letters and made it a big deal and started discussing it. And that the funding that was going to be redirected to fund a new police station was actually nixed and not, and stayed with the park. But without that, without feeling public pressure, sometimes city council people and others who are in power don't feel, feel like, things can happen and go unnoticed. So I think it's important that we look at that. But when we look back at the article and we're talking about small margins, and can anybody comment on what the author means by small margins and why do they matter in local elections? And I'll put that in the chat as well for those.
I'll jump in. I'm not sure if this is exactly what the author was referring to, but I know there was a Tampa election, maybe 2016, between Ed Noreen and Senator Darrell Rousson, and it came down to like 75 votes. And so
75.
75 votes. And I mean, we see, food lines longer than that. And so 75 votes, that's kind of split the difference between, who represented us in Tallahassee and who didn't. And so when I think of small margins, I think of numbers like that.
Right, right. Thank you so much for sharing that. Anybody else wanna talk about what the author means by small margins? Like, we just heard 75 votes, right? That's a church, a civic organization, a neighborhood association that could really swing what happens. Heck, that's one community grocery co-op. We're 160 some odd members strong. Yay, yay, yay. So this is the thing. And when we think about that, two times, right? Yeah. Uh, when we think about that, it's these are the circles that you are in. Your social network could really be the difference in an election. And so this is why we're sharing this. I'm so thankful for those people who are joining us. And we want to make sure that it doesn't come down to less than 75 people who are making the decision, when we know in an area for, there might be 10,000 eligible voters, and we really want to capture that. And so Those are the small margins. Does anybody want to comment on in your own neighborhood or precinct or district, what you think some of the barriers are to higher voter turnout? Because we're talking about 75 people, right, who could make a difference. But what causes, those people who are not in that 75, what causes those people not to come out? Anybody want to comment on that? Mistrust. Thank you.
Lack of
Apathy.
education.
Lack of education. Thank you. Apathy, lack of understanding and interest, right? And so sometimes I feel like when we talk about apathy and lack of understanding and interest, do people really realize what's at stake? Do people really realize those people who are elected can make choices about money being diverted, money going into a neighborhood versus someone's pet project and things like that? And then when we look at the mistrust, how do we build trust in our neighborhoods and help people come together and say, we can do this. This is something that we need to push forward. This is a person of character and who we can trust to move these things forward. Any other ideas? All right. One of the things that and there's a comment I just saw, the topic isn't spoken about in a language that interests certain demographics. That's true. We call that like the alphabet soup when people are using acronyms and words that are very specific and people are like, I don't even know what they're talking about, right? I see, Gabby, you have your hand up. Go ahead, please feel free to unmute. This is a conversation.
I think one of the reasons why you don't have topics spoken about in the language that interests certain demographics is a lot of times there's a difference between being a politician and a public servant. And when you're in it to serve the public, then you're going to understand your audience and you're going to know how to speak their language because you've been a part of the community, as opposed to someone who is just trying to climb a certain ladder. You know what I'm saying? And it's all for, this will get me here and this will get me there. Then you're really not interested in speaking in a way that people can understand. You just want to speak in a way that'll make you win.
Right. And someone said not embracing the power of their vote. Yes. And Debbie, you are on it. Someone said in the chat, a public servant, like you are there to serve the public and not necessarily build your political resume, right? And so those are big things. I mean, I look at some of the things that happen from county to county, and I look and was amazed to find out that in Pinellas County, on election day, regardless of what level of election it is, PSTA, you can ride the bus for free to your polling place. You just have to show your voter registration card, or if you have already voted, show your sticker saying that you already voted. But that's not true. The same doesn't happen in Hillsborough County. And I was amazed. They said they do it for the national election, but they don't do it for local elections. The same with, we saw in 2024, Uber was offering free rides. There were all these services that really opened up and said like, hey, we're going to get people to the polls. We're going to get people out on these national elections. But, unfortunately, in some areas on the local front, that's just not the case. And so I think that's a barrier as well. And when we look at the ripple effects of this, right? Because we have to look at, and I'm not sure, and I would love to see by showing of emojis or some type of reaction, how many people really understand that District 5 in Tampa and District 16, Senatorial District 16 have the same, they're nestled in one another. Sorry. They're nestled in one another. So Senate District 16 goes from South St. Petersburg all the way up through Hillsborough, right? And there's been a lot of comment on that, and in a few months ago, in fact, it was the source of a gerrymandering case. And we have to think about that. Like, how does that happen? And so one of the questions I have is, how might the fact that District 5 lies within Senate District 16 intensify the ripple effects of who gets elected? We have to think about that and think about how people are actually, what's the plan for this? Because there's definitely a plan. Like sometimes we feel like we're just, electing and it's just happenstance, but it's not. There's a plan. So what do you think I'm going to let you guys kind of think about that. And what do you feel, what do folks feel about that? And there's some people on Facebook that say some people rely on news for awareness, right? But as the article said, if it's a news desert, was the term they used in the article, how are we really getting information, right? Do you feel like there are some people in Tampa who don't even know an election is going on? What are our thoughts on that? Any comment? Wow. And I see another comment, the population is more ethnic in Tampa, Hillsborough, and I noticed they don't have the resources that are in Pinellas. That can be a factor as well. All right. So I really want to get, someone said, I know lots of people who didn't know there was an election coming up. Right. And this is a special election because it's a special circumstance. It's a saddening circumstance because the council seat is open because someone actually passed away, which is sad, but this is life, and these are the things that happen. So what happens when a city council member passes away is a good question. In your council district, or what happens if a city council member loses their seat. We had this happen in Pinellas here a few years ago. And so how do we deal with that? Kevi, you had your hand up, I'm sorry.
No.
Oh, I thought you had your hand up.
Mm-mm.
Sorry. All right. So what we're gonna do, and I want to put us in some small breakout groups, and those of you who are joining us online, you can discuss, keep the discussion flowing on our Facebook page, but we can also, I want to put us in some smaller groups, and those won't be live for about 10 minutes. And I just want you guys to kind of discuss in your groups, how you can make an impact and about the article. And I'll put some questions in the chat, and then we'll come back and we'll share out really fast. So bear with me while I put you all into breakout groups and we get this going.